Get ready to step into a world where the unknown lurks in the shadows and the impossible becomes reality. Here, you will hear stories that defy logic, encounters with the unexplained, and mysteries that echo through time. Welcome, but be careful. Some stories are more than just tales. They are still alive. I hope this account serves as a warning to those who have ever considered taking their own life. You have no idea what awaits you on the other side. The terrors that dwell there are unimaginable, and the suffering endless. Before you entertain any such thought, I ask you to reflect. No matter the difficulty, there is always a way out. You just have to find it. Do not wish to experience the horror I went through. And the worst part is that terror lasted only a few seconds. I can't even imagine what it would be like to spend an eternity in that place. It all began during my school years. To the outside observer, I appeared to be an ordinary, smiling, and lively boy. But within those walls, I lived a true nightmare. A group of students decided to pick on me because of my health condition. I have suffered from alopecia universalis since birth, a disease that causes the loss of all the hair on the body. I was very different from the other children, and to them, I wasn't just unaccepted. I was a freak who didn't deserve to be among normal boys. At every opportunity, they would drag me to the back of the school and beat me mercilessly. If I ever tried to tell anyone, they promised that the next target would be my younger brother, who had just started at the school. The school ranged from kindergarten to high school. I would never allow my brother to go through what I was enduring. So I held on. He was my only reason to continue. Yet every day I felt more exhausted. Every week I came up with excuses for my mother about the bruises. She couldn't suspect a thing. The bullies were smart too. They soon stopped hitting my face to avoid raising suspicion. Even with all this, my brother was my source of joy. He was always smiling, playing, and that made me want to protect him even more. He even began helping me by applying ointment to my wounds. He said that those marks didn't look like they were just from falls or rough play. I lied to him as well, but I knew he was beginning to suspect. Until one day, I decided to fight back. I stopped silently enduring those assaults. The punishment was so severe that they didn't even bother sparing my face. Once again, I lied to my mother, saying that I had been mugged on my way home and beaten for refusing to hand over my belongings. But the truth was that my life was becoming unbearable. It was around that time that I met two boys who were also victims of that group. In conversation, they told me about an exit, a medication that according to them would simply put us to sleep peacefully. It was the first time I considered the idea of ending it all. The days went by and the assaults continued. We were exhausted. Then one of them handed me the pills in case I ever decided to take them. Curiosity took hold of me, but I chose to wait. Then, days later, the news came. The two boys had died. According to the medical report, if they had been helped in time, they might have been saved. The medication slowly weakened the heart until it eventually stopped. They left no farewell note. The school was in shock, but I knew the real reason behind it all. Since then, every night I would stare at the bottle of pills, convincing myself to find the courage to follow the same path. I couldn't take it any longer. I began to hear voices in my head, calling me a coward for not having done it yet. They told me I was worthless, that my existence made no difference. Then, that night, I made my decision. I went to school as if nothing were happening. When I returned home, I hugged my parents after dinner and told my brother how much I loved him. I waited until everyone was asleep. Then I swallowed all the pills, lay down in bed, and closed my eyes. That's when the real nightmare began. It felt as if I had fallen asleep and suddenly woken up. But something was wrong. My room was engulfed in a dense, suffocating darkness. At first, I thought the medicine hadn't taken effect. But when I left my room and entered my parents' room, I noticed everything was different. They weren't there. I ran to my brother's room, and he too was empty. That definitely wasn't heaven. Fear overtook me. The floor beneath my feet felt strange. The air was heavy. I decided to run down the stairs in desperation. It was then that I saw several human figures gathered in the living room, watching me. Their smiles were distorted, grotesque. One of them slowly approached and whispered, "Do you want to join us?" I had never felt such terror in my life. My mouth opened, but no sound emerged. When the others began advancing toward me, I panicked and fled. I needed help. But who could help me? I had committed the worst mistake of my life. Their screams echoed behind me. They said that I now belonged to that place and that I would never be able to leave it again. Others laughed, saying they were eager to savor a new soul. My heart tightened at the thought of what that meant. As a final attempt to escape, I ran out of the house. But upon reaching the garden, I realized that even more of those shadowy creatures were waiting for me. Could they be people like me who had made the same decision? Or were they lurking demons? Terrified, I fell to my knees. There was no escape. When they noticed my surrender, they all advanced at once. I closed my eyes and, for the first time in years, pleaded with God for help. But I didn't deserve to be saved. I had rejected the life He gave me. I hadn't sought a better solution. I was weak, and now I would pay for it. But before their hands could touch me, I woke up. I was in an ambulance. The doctors were reviving me. They managed to remove everything I had taken, and I survived. My parents discovered the truth. The bullies were expelled, and at the new school they attended, they suffered the same things they did to me. I spent 2 years in therapy. My life changed completely. My friends, today I tell you, do not make the same mistake. What awaits us in that dark world is infinitely worse than any suffering on earth. Good evening, everyone. Afraid of being judged for what I am about to recount, I ask that my name not be revealed, please. I decided to share my experience not only so that we can reflect on our own choices, but also because I feel this is a way to confirm some things I had been reading in certain books. I know it may sound insane, and if I hadn't witnessed it myself, I might not believe it. I don't mean to scare anyone, but there is something beyond this life, and I had the misfortune of experiencing its worst side. I have always been an avid reader, and among the books I reread the most is Dante Alighieri's The Divine Comedy. As many know, this writer was the first to describe hell, dividing it into circles, each reserved for a specific sin. I always wondered how a mere writer could have created something so detailed. I spent a lot of time reflecting on the possibility that he was right. The elements described were so precise that they seemed impossible to have been invented. At that time, I was studying history at university, and it was there that I met Elise. She approached me when she saw me reading The Divine Comedy, and we quickly became friends. We shared similar interests, visited museums, and spent a lot of time together, until we eventually became involved. But our relationship started in the worst possible way. I was selfish and convinced her to break up with her boyfriend so she could be with me. He was an older man, someone I had not known until then, and frankly, I didn't care. I know she cheated on him with me, and even though I knew it was wrong, I couldn't resist the temptation. I tried to justify it to myself by saying that if my heart felt love for her, then it couldn't be such a bad thing. But deep down, I knew that her ex-boyfriend had never done anything wrong to her. On the contrary, he treated her very well. Even so, we gave in to desire. Our love grew each day, and we made plans for the future. I introduced Elise to my parents, and she started spending weekends at my house. Everything seemed perfect. On one of those nights of conversation, I shared with her my interest in exploring the circles of hell, just to verify if what was written in the book was real. Now, with the passage of time, I see that it seemed like madness, but she embraced my madness, and soon we were terrified by the possibility of being trapped in such a horrible place for eternity. However, we had no idea what we were attracting into our lives. Over time, our priorities changed. I was never a party guy, but because of her and her friends, I started going to clubs and meeting people very different from me. I thought I was finally truly living. For a moment, I wondered if I had wasted my youth on those obsessive readings. My parents said I seemed happier with Elise, and I couldn't disagree. I was enchanted. But everything changed on what should have been an ordinary night. We went to the movies. I don't remember which film we saw, only that it was one of the last screenings of the day. When we left, the mall was practically empty, and almost all the stores were already closed. We were walking hand in hand when I noticed someone waiting for us outside. It was her ex-boyfriend. I saw him for the first time when he caught up with us on a deserted street. He pulled out a gun and pointed it at me, his hands trembling and his eyes filled with hatred. He insulted me in a humiliating way and said that my life would end right there. At that moment, there was no one around. I had no way to save myself. In one swift motion, he pulled the trigger. The shot pierced my chest. I fell backward to the ground, feeling life drain from my body as he fled. Elise was screaming. A few people approached, but it was already too late. Everything went dark. When I regained consciousness, I was in a strange, rocky, and hot place. I quickly got up upon feeling the heat beneath my feet. A liquid was seeping from my chest, but I felt no pain. Then I heard the sound of chains in the distance. I followed that sound and, to my horror, found an endless line of chained souls. They were being whipped by a monstrous creature and punished by furious winds that knocked them down and made them burn in the lava on the ground. That sight was terrifying. I was in the second circle of hell, where Dante describes the punishment for the lustful. Before I could react, I felt the presence of something behind me. A creature with red skin, a pointed tail, and a cruel smile stared at me fixedly. "Where do you prefer your chains? On your neck, your wrists, or your ankles?" it asked, amused by my despair. The souls around began to scream, demanding that I be chained as well. Panic overwhelmed me and I ran, but the creature caught up with me. Just as it was about to seize me, I woke up. I was on the ground, at Elise's feet. I was trying to breathe as the paramedics attended to me. I survived, but that experience changed my life. We reported the man who attacked me, and he was arrested. But I ended up breaking up with Elise. I don't know if I truly went to hell or if it was just a hallucination caused by my state, but what I saw was very real to me. Today I wonder if my fate is already sealed or if that vision was just a warning. And what if, after death, we are all destined to go through something similar? I hope I'm wrong. What I thought would be just a simple excursion to an abandoned house turned into a true nightmare. Even today, my skin still gives me goosebumps when I remember everything that happened, or what could have happened. My name is Kate, and this is my near-death experience. I come from a humble family, not in financial terms, since my father held a good position at a relatively large company, but because my parents came from nothing and fought for everything we had. My sister and I never faced hardships, but unlike them, I was always different. I was more rebellious, preferred the streets to home, and always caused my parents a lot of trouble. At the time, it had only been 2 months since I graduated from high school. The school I attended was on strike, and there was no forecast for classes to resume. I made the most of that time, having fun with my friends who were as impulsive and reckless as I was. And that's how we decided to explore an abandoned house in the middle of the forest. In truth, more than a house, it was a real mansion. Billy, one of my friends, said that there were rumors the place was haunted by all kinds of spirits. He thought that seeing a ghost would be the best thing in the world, something to tell people about. Rose, the bravest in the group, suggested that we record everything with our cell phones to have evidence. Most of us declined the idea, as we had read somewhere that recording a spirit could cause it to follow us forever. Even though I was skeptical, I allowed myself to be swayed by popular opinion. I also never liked supporting Rose's ideas, for reasons I prefer not to mention. The journey to the house was longer than I expected. It took nearly 2 hours of walking before we finally arrived. The building was situated in a kind of depression in the land, a hollow in the middle of the forest. Vehicle access was impossible, and according to Billy, the house was over 100 years old. We entered with ease. The door offered no resistance, but the interior was covered with vines and overgrown vegetation that crept in through the windows and infiltrated the wooden floor. Luckily, we brought flashlights, though the light from our cell phones would have been enough. Our main goal was to explore the second floor, where the bedrooms were located. We climbed the stairs and decided to split up. I went alone into one of the bedrooms. There was a bed and some furniture that appeared to be in good condition, but I was certain that if I sat down, everything would collapse. I began rummaging through some drawers, trying to find something interesting, but I had no luck. It was then that I noticed the window was covered with planks. The wood, rotted by time, came off easily. I removed them one by one without difficulty. And it was the worst thing I could have done. After finishing, I saw the window glass and tried to open it completely. But before I could manage it, I felt something cold enter my mouth. It was like a gust of air, yet somehow it filled me from within, sending shivers from head to toe. I had never felt anything like it. Fear took hold of me, and I ran out of the room. I found my friend Lucy in the adjacent room and told her what had happened. I was feeling dizzy and decided to lie down in the corridor while waiting for the others to return. When everyone gathered, I began to feel very ill. An intense fever arose out of nowhere, and my body ached so much that Billy had to carry me. I was convinced that something had entered my body in that room, but even after explaining what had happened, no one knew what to do. Upon leaving the mansion, Rose noticed another cabin, a little further away. She said that perhaps we could find help there. I thought the idea was absurd. If the mansion was abandoned, that cabin must be in even worse condition. We decided to press on and look for help by the roadside, or try to find a house with a parked car and ask them to take me to the hospital. At that moment, my body burned with fever, and suddenly everything fell silent. I heard only a voice saying, "Her heart has stopped beating." I closed my eyes, certain that I would never wake up again. But I awoke, just not in the same way. I saw my own body lying on the ground while my friends tried to revive me. It was as if my soul were outside my body. I was watching everything, but no one could see me. They grabbed my legs and arms and began to run as fast as they could. I heard Coolio start to cry, saying that I was dead. As we moved away, I felt something leaving my mouth, like the same current of air that had possessed me before. As soon as it left me, I began breathing normally again. I managed to speak, and when they heard my voice, stopped, relieved to see that I was alive. From then on, I was able to walk again, and we continued on foot for the rest of the way. When we returned to the city, we told the police everything, but they couldn't do anything. They even took us home in a patrol car and informed our parents about what we had done. That house, although abandoned, was private property and was fenced, walled, and had a gate locked with a padlock. We had jumped over the wall to enter, which constituted trespassing. They said that if we approached that place again, we would be charged with trespassing. But I didn't need a police order to stay away from that place. Today, even after all this time, I have no desire whatsoever to return there. Thank you all very much for your attention. Good evening, Luke. Good evening, everyone. What I'm about to recount, many of you may already imagine, especially those familiar with the reality of overcrowded, under-resourced prisons, but few know the details of what truly happens behind these walls. Perhaps by the time this story comes to light, I will no longer be alive. Or worse, perhaps I have succumbed to evil just to keep breathing. That is why I found a way to make this story surpass the walls that imprison me. I do not wish to reveal my identity or explain how I managed to send this story. I only want everyone to know the truth. I ended up here for an unforgivable crime. Not only before the law, but before God. I took someone's life. It was a woman, a preschool teacher. I had only intended to steal her purse, but in the midst of the chaos, desperation overtook me and I pulled the trigger. I know my family is ashamed of me, which is why they do not visit. Deep down, I prefer it that way. I do not want them to come here and believe, even for a second, that there is any trace of goodness in these people. When I was arrested, they placed me in a small cell with 8 other men. One of them was a huge man, nearly 2 meters tall, muscular and intimidating. At first, I thought I wouldn't survive even 2 days alongside him, but I soon realized that his attitude was friendly, even kind. That made me let my guard down. That was my first mistake. In prison, I tried to fit in. In the yard, I approached those who played sports or lifted weights. I believed that making friends would ease my survival there, but I did not imagine how difficult it would be. The inmates seemed very religious. They frequently spoke of a good news that awaited me. At first, I thought they were talking about faith in God, redemption. I was wrong. Over time, I began to notice strange behaviors. My cellmate spent hours meditating, murmuring words in a language I did not understand. Once he looked me in the eyes and said that I should never interrupt him during those moments. I complied, thinking they were prayers, a way to maintain sanity in that hell. Until one night, one of the guards called me and asked if I wanted to go to the bathroom. Here the cells do not have bathrooms, so I agreed immediately. As we walked down the corridor, I saw something that sent chills down my spine. All the inmates were sitting on the floor, legs crossed, murmuring in that same strange language. The guard pulled me away, and when we reached the bathroom, he whispered, "They sold their souls." I asked how he knew that, and he told me that one of the inmates, before dying, had confessed everything. They had created a new religion, a dark cult, in which they made pacts with something that promised power and protection. The man who refused to participate was killed by his own companions. The guard warned me that I would be next. He said he needed to protect me because sooner or later they would come after me. I asked him why he was telling me this, and he revealed that he was a Christian. He said he had tried several times to be transferred, but his requests were denied. "They do not want me to leave here," he whispered. I returned to my cell, but I couldn't sleep any longer. The supposed kindness of the inmates now seemed like a perverse game to convince me to join their madness. My cellmate soon confronted me. He said that my time had come, that I should become one of them. I refused immediately. I declared that it was an abomination. He completely changed. His once calm gaze turned cold and gloomy. Before I could react, he pulled out a sharp object and struck me several times in the abdomen. The pain was unbearable. I fell to the floor, feeling my blood run across that filthy ground. The guards came and pulled him away from me. I was dragged to the infirmary where I lost consciousness. When I awoke my friends, I was alone. But the strangest part was that I felt no pain. My wounds had vanished. I staggered out and walked back to the cells, only to be met with a scene of pure horror. The inmates were different. Their eyes were red as embers, and their bodies twisted in a macabre fashion. My cellmate was there, but he was no longer himself. His face was deformed, his mouth covered in blood, and beside him was another inmate devouring a corpse. Panic overtook me. I began to run, but the corridors seemed endless. Darkness enveloped me, and an inexplicable chill seized my body. I didn't know if I was insane, dead, or doomed to something far worse. Then I understood. That place was a purgatory, a prison for impure souls. The demons there fed on spirits that had lost all hope of salvation. The guard who helped me died a few days later, murdered by one of the inmates. I survived, but only physically, for I know that my soul is already condemned. The new warden arrived recently, and since then the atmosphere has grown even heavier. Something big is coming, and I don't know if I will have the strength to resist. I only know one thing. I will not surrender my soul to the devil. I will not become part of this damned cult. I'd rather die than bow down to them. May God have mercy on me, and above all, may he have mercy on my soul. Thank you very much for watching our video until the end. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Have a haunted night, everyone, and see you next time.